How would you feel if you suddenly found out that you had lost a constitutionally protected right? How angry would you be? How upset would you be? How fearful would you be? Well, that very thing recently happened in the United States. The United States Supreme Court overturned a decision that had stood for nearly 50 years, a decision that affects women's health and their rights over the autonomy of their bodies. The reason for the overturning of the decision, however, has much further reaching implications that could potentially affect everyone. Obviously, I'm talking about the recent decision to overturn Roe versus Wade. In 1973, the case of Roe versus Wade was decided by the United States Supreme Court, which challenged Texas's laws that prohibited abortion, and that decision found that Texas's prohibition, or their laws, were unconstitutional and violated a person's rights to privacy under the First, Fourth, Fifth, Ninth, and 14th Amendments. When the Supreme Court decided to overturn Roe versus Wade, they effectively restricted or eliminated a constitutionally protected right for women. In the United States, approximately 47% of people identify as pro-choice, another 47% of people identify as pro-life, 2% of people identify as mixed or neither, and another 4% identify with no opinion, as reported by Gallup. So essentially, we can all agree, no matter what your stance is, that we want to have the right to make decisions about our own bodies. And we can all agree that we have an interest in human health and our quality of life. So there are a myriad of misconceptions that surround abortions and abortion laws. We'll discuss three: the criminalization of abortion, irresponsible pregnancies or the perception of that, and the morality of abortion. Abortion rates are roughly the same in countries where abortions are legal or whether they're illegal. The only thing that changes is the number of criminals that you have in your society and how safe those abortions are. In countries where abortions are legal, you have doctors who are regulated and trained to perform abortions safely. In places where abortions are illegal, people still find a way, obviously, and they're either self-induced or they're unregulated abortion providers, typically resulting in hemorrhaging that requires hospitalization, infertility, and even death. When we look at the misconception of irresponsible pregnancies from people being promiscuous or the lack of contraceptives, we need to look at the fact that this is an oversimplified way of looking at things, and that we need to make the concession that contraception is not always available. Not everyone has access to contraceptives. Contraceptives are also not always effective. I'm personally the father of 3 children, all of whom were conceived with contraceptives. Sex and contraceptive use are impacted by people's lives. People's health affects whether or not they're able to use certain types of contraceptives. Their relationship statuses, substance use and abuse can affect how well or if somebody is even going to use contraceptives, and the resources that are available to people. We've also got to take into account that sex and contraception are not always voluntary. And we need to take a look at the tropes and judgments that are associated with this ideology. We perceive women as either good or bad, which is not really a fair thing, and we overjudge women for their sexual activity in ways that we wouldn't judge men. When we take a look at the morality that is associated with abortions, the scientific community at large doesn't even agree on when life begins. The first trimester is when almost all abortions are performed, and at that stage in development, we're either an embryo or a fetus. Embryos and fetuses are not viable forms of life. They cannot exist outside of the womb. They would not be able to survive. The morality idea or argument also tends to lean on a lot of inflammatory statements like killing and murdering, which tends to give life to an idea or give the idea that something is more than what it actually is. Unborn children makes you think of somebody who has autonomy. And then we look at beliefs. And everybody's allowed to have their own beliefs and are entitled to their own beliefs, religious or otherwise. But our beliefs are not based on science or medicine and should not be used to dictate policy. So some statistics. In 2021, a Gallup poll reported that about 1 in 4 women, 24% of women, will have an abortion by the age of 45. 51% of abortion patients report using contraception the month that they conceived. Nearly half of all U.S. abortion patients are in their 20s. About 6 out of 10, 59% of abortion patients have already had one or more children. 49% of patients identified as pro-choice. Another 47% of people who have abortions identified as pro-life, with 4% of those having abortions having no opinion. Over half, 54%, identified themselves as Christians. So we look at reasons for choosing an abortion. There are a multitude. Financial reasons, not the right time, partner issues, whether that's marital, whether that's abuse, focus on other children. How many children can you possibly support? It interferes with their future. They're emotionally not ready. They want a better life for their baby. They're health-related reasons. They're not mature enough to be a parent yet. Family and friends influence people into having abortions. They didn't want a baby. And then lastly, there's other. And those statistics are reported by BMC's Women's Health. The CDC reports as well that most abortions, as we saw on a previous slide, were performed in the first trimester. When we look at the chart here, we can see that less than 6 weeks is when the multitude of abortions are actually performed. When we get into 7 to 9 weeks, that's the next bulk. When we look at 10 to 13 weeks, that incorporates another 13%. 14 to 15 weeks, we get to 3%. It's not until we get all the way over into looking at more than 21 weeks, which is when we've gotten into the second trimester and we start looking at what they term late-term abortions. Only 1% of all abortions are what they consider late-term abortions. And here's some statistics that are pretty staggering. According to the American Journal of Preventive Medicine, more than 32,000 adult women get pregnant from rape every year. That means that 5% of women of reproductive age, 12 to 45, will experience a rape-related pregnancy. And of those people reporting rape-related pregnancies, 77.3% of those victims relate that the rape was committed by a current or former intimate partner. Another 13.9% were committed by acquaintances, and only 8.8% were committed by a stranger or another person. Janet in Texas is an NICU, neonatal intensive care unit nurse. On her 13th attempt at in vitro fertilization, she became pregnant with twin girls. 21 weeks into her pregnancy, she became septic from a dental procedure. She went into early labor and lost her first child. Her labor then stopped, and she was trying to carry the second child to term would have resulted in Janet's death, and had to abort the baby to save her own life. Without the availability of abortion, this scenario would not have played out the same. Erin was 23 years old when she became pregnant unexpectedly. She was not in a serious relationship. She was undergoing treatment for a very rare bone disorder, bone tumor disease. She found out she was pregnant 7 weeks in, and she had 2 active tumors that were scheduled for surgery. The embryo would not have survived the treatments. She elected to have an abortion. With current abortion laws, depending on where she's at, she could have been jailed for this decision or not been able to have access to that kind of care. Donna from Georgia was abused by her stepfather from the ages of 8 to 17. When she was 15, she became pregnant. She lied and said that it was her boyfriend's. Not wanting to bring a child into the world from those circumstances, she sought an abortion. Even pregnant and after the abortion, the mental and physical abuse continued at home. So what's next? Judge Thomas has already stated plans to eliminate the availability of contraceptives. He's aiming to end gay marriages and to criminalize gay relationships under the 14th Amendment, stating that our rights to privacy are not absolute. So what do you think the future of body autonomy looks like? Do you want to be told what you can and can't do with your own body? I know I don't. So the Supreme Court has already reversed its ruling. What can we do about it? Would you be willing to join a rally or march on the Capitol to help ensure that abortion rights are restored? That seems like a tall order. Would you be willing to call, write, or email state legislature to let them know that they need to preserve abortion rights in the state of Florida? I think so. Thank you.